Yo, what's the word? It's Comrade Ibn Sudan here with the People's Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I got with me my co-host, Comrade Caballero. How you doing, man? Yeah. Oh yeah, not me. I'm not super stressed. And we also got Comrade Stu. Want to shout him out over here doing all the technical stuff. He's a super smart guy. You know, I never understood that. You good with computers, Comrade?
No.
Yeah. I'm not into computers either. But anyways, so today we got an interesting topic. We want to talk about communism. Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, comrades, so we're going to talk about communism. What are your feelings on communism?
I like it pretty much, honestly. Since ever I read my Communist Manifesto,
Good
I
book.
got in love with
It's actually
Marx.
boring, but
And then I felt very attracted to the philosophy of materialism, which is my fucking topic. I love that topic.
So you read the Communist Manifesto, then you became a communist?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. I became a communist. Wait, how old were you?
I was, good question, I think I was around 15 years old.
Oh, see, I was 16. I think I was 16. Yeah, I was 16 when I declared myself to be a communist. I didn't read enough though until I was like 20.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's like a common mistake that they all always do with the communists, man. They ask us to have complete knowledge of our ideology in order to call ourselves communists. Whenever you fucking us to a social democrat, they don't even know what is democracy, but they can call themselves social democrats, and no one fucking argue with them.
Yeah, I mean, all other parties suck.
So if you don't like capitalism and you like the redistribution of resources, call yourself a communist.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Fine, fuck social democracy, petty bourgeois liberalism. But anyways, yeah, no, I think I became a communist age 16. Fidel Castro died. I think he died November 10th, 2016. Comrade will fact check me later. But I read about him. Then through reading him, I discovered Che Guevara, and I was like, yeah, that's the move. I want to be like this cat right here. He was a cool dude. So shout out Che Guevara. He made me into a communist at the age of 16, 1 year after Comrade.
November 25th.
November 25th. I thought it was the 10th. Yeah. So now I became a communist after learning about him and being like, wow, yeah, this Che guy is really the move. So anyways, yeah, we're going to talk about this ideology today. So, Comrade, let's break it down for him. Let's do the mathematics.
Let's go.
What is communism all about, bro? What do you think it is?
It's all about the means of production, comrade.
What's the means of production?
Whenever we talk about means of production, we are thinking of money that make money by itself. Like, for example, you invest in, let's do it in an example from the past that can help us understand it, and then we can try to adapt it to the modern. Whenever a capitalist, someone that owns a business, buys, for example, the machinery necessary to create, let's say, computers. Now he has invested some money that after that first inversion is making money by itself. He doesn't have to do any labor out of it. He doesn't have to sell his labor, comrade. Imagine that. And with that, we call that he owns the means of production. Because in order to produce something, you need to have the means to do it, right? So you just own the means of production. Nowadays, it's a little bit more difficult, right, comrade? It's a little bit more diffuse. It's not anymore a machine.
Yeah.
Whenever we think of Bezos or people that is capitalist.
Yeah, but I and this is the thing. Like, for example, I remember he was on the phone talking to somebody in Spain. I don't remember who he was talking to. My comrade from Spain. Shout out to Spain. You know, shout out to the Republic. You know, viva. But he was talking to somebody in Spain, and they heard us because he was at my house. They heard us saying that I think I was saying "Long live the proletariat," "Down with the bourgeoisie." You know, just old slogans that communists used to use, and they're like, "Man, you guys use such outdated terms, such terms that like, man, you sound like you belong in the 18th or 19th century." And comrade, I think that's wrong. I think that's fundamentally wrong in the sense that like the means of production are still privately owned. We still exist under capitalism, which is the current mode of economic organization that's dominant in society.
Time it settles down more and more.
Right, exactly. But the whole feng shui has just switched up on us, because now, instead of producing materials, because of the development in technology and the improvement, generally speaking, of course, if you go to certain areas in the, not even the world, even in the United States, certain areas that are super depressed and backwards in the sense of like economically backwards, they you still see this poverty, this old style poverty that was prevalent in the 18th and 19th century. But because of the improvement, we've now shifted from producing material things to producing immaterial things. So the material things, like Comrade said, like computers. Obviously, they didn't have computers back in the time of Marx, but let's just say shoes. They were producing shoes. They had the capitalists who bought a factory that produced shoes. And as a result, he'd hire a bunch of workers. He, the capitalist, of course, never labored, but he owned the means to produce the shoes, hired a bunch of people to work there. And then, for example, they would produce, let's say, $80 worth of shoes per like 12-hour shift, and he would compensate them $10. So he has $80 there of excess that he's able to sell on the market to accumulate his profit. But these days, instead of it being a material thing like a shoe, something that you can tangibly observe, measure, and examine, it's immaterial things. So, for example, if you go to a massage parlor, I don't know if that's the proper term for it, but or a spa. So they're not actually producing something material. They're actually giving you a service. And this service is, of course, in the form of the massage that they give you. Or Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is not something that you can measure. You cannot observe it. You can't touch Wi-Fi. It's a service that they give to you. And then another way in which the economy has transitioned from the time of Marx, which Marx was predominantly looking at material things that were produced in industry, is intellectual capital or commodities. That is, like, for example, you have a research institute that does a bunch of research, let's say on climate change, let's say on cures in the medical field. And they produce some type of intellectual property, some new scientific discovery, some new advancement. So that's how the economy has changed. But the dynamic is still there, that it's privately owned, and that the capitalist, owns that means of production and exploits the proletarian underneath him in order to accumulate these millions and millions. So you agree with that, right?
Of course.
So what's the alternative to that, comrade? How do we? What's new? How do we? What's different? Like what do we want to change about that? You know what I mean?
Well, communism is something. So it's an ideology that has such a wide spectrum that depending on who you ask, they will tell you many different things. Especially if we go to Europe, there is a lot of faith in democracy, and I think that is the first step. We have to understand that democracy is not the way to go. At least the social democracy that they are selling us in Europe and the parliamentary democracy, I think is called, that you have in America.
No, liberal democracy.
Liberal democracy.
Yeah.
Well,
what's that thing called? Constitutional republic?
We have a presidential system.
A presidential system.
Most of Europe has a parliamentary system.
Yeah, Europe is the parliament. You're the motherfucker with the parliaments.
Yeah, we love the parliaments. Yeah. Which, well, there will be a lot to discuss about the parliaments. But, well, generally...
Parliaments suck.
Yeah. Generally, what we communists stand for is the revolution. The
Viva!
uptake of the weapons, of the arms, in order to liberate the proletarians, in order to liberate the people. And this liberation means the dictatorship of the proletariat. We are not down for democracy. We are down for democracy.
Up Lenin. Up Stalin. But keep going, comrade. Sorry. Gotta throw in the slogans there, you know what I'm saying?
And what does this dictatorship of the proletariat mean, comrade? Well, it just means that is the proletarian who own the means of production and not the bourgeoisie.
Down.
We organize ourselves through Soviets, which are a gathering of proletarians divided by fields. So, for example, if we are talking about doctors, there will be a Soviet of doctors. We can call it Soviet. We can call it American yet. We can call it European. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Unions, maybe. Yeah.
Unions. And we decide on the matters that is related to the doctors. Who is going to know better about the doctors' matters than the doctors? We tend to give the responsibility to people that are philosophers or politicians that don't know anything about the field of that they are deciding on. So it is the people that know best what is best for the people. And through that, we give a 360, how you say?
Like a change.
Like a 360 change
Yeah. From what we have now,
from what we have now.
which is the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie.
No, if we do 360, we end up in the same.
So it's 180.
So it's 180.
Ah. Hey, nigga, that's math. I'm not with the math, me personally. But interesting. So hold on, I gotta get myself looking nice for the cameras. What's up? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, so check it out. Sorry about that. Okay, so comrade, check it out. You said that we need to organize the workers based on their professions, of course, into Soviets, and these Soviets would have the control of the means of production. Now, this is my personal opinion. I want to get your take on it. So what distinguishes us from us like communists, us that follow theories of Marx and Lenin, then of course me personally I follow Mao. Some people don't like Mao, whatever. The point is us Marxists, us communists, what distinguishes us from the anarchists, say, or the libertarian socialists who in my opinion, co-opt the ideas of Marx, neglect especially Lenin, but of course Stalin and Mao, is that the Soviets themselves isn't in the control of the government. That the Soviets have powers over the Soviets, but they work in coordination with the state. So, for example, you said the doctors know what's best for the doctors, or the farmers know what's best for the farmers to produce the most amounts of good possible, whether it be in healthcare or it be in if they're farming wheat or buckwheat, which is very good. Shout out to comrade. He's not a comrade. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
It's very good.
it's a buckle.
A straight goofy. But anyways, so they know what's best, but they need to coordinate with the other Soviets. And the only way to coordinate the means of production is through the state, which is controlled obviously by the Communist Party.
Of course.
And
We
then-
are talking here about the method of organization, but
Yeah.
how the society will run in the sense of a government. There would be I would take it from a Maoist perspective, honestly, that I think that is the one that is more advanced to the material circumstances. He's the latest big implementation of communism in the real world. So how I would imagine this government is a revolutionary party made up of proletarians that study deeply the dialectical materialism and historical materialism, and what they do is go from this knowledge, revolutionary knowledge, they go to the people and do a sociology study on what are the needs of the people.
An
So
investigation.
they go to the people, and the people give them feedback, and then this feedback goes back to the party. The party discuss about these matters and give back the needs of the society
policy.
in a revolutionary perspective.
Right.
With that, we try to advance more and more to our goal, which is communism through the cultural revolution.
That's a solid answer. So you're pro central planning, that the state must plan the economy,
Of course.
in essence. Yeah.
And with
And I
technology,
think-
I think it's even more necessary.
Yeah, it's easier. I think it's easier and more necessary. Correct.
If Mao had ChatGPT,
China would be shining. China would have reached the heavens by now. Shout out to Mao Zedong. Shout out to the People's Republic of China. Fuck you, dang, you're a revisionist cunt. But anyways, continue on, because I think that's important to distinguish that, to make that point very clear, that the state has a very critical role, and of course the state is in the hands of the proletariat, and we must not do what the Dengist revisionists did, which is say that because the communists are in power, that class struggle has ended. Class struggle does not end simply because the Communist Party owns power.
we've seen it.
And we've seen it. Literally China, who Mao struggled so hard against the bourgeoisie. He said, a very famous quote, he said, you were worried about where the bourgeoisie, talking to the Chinese people, you're worried about where the capitalists are. They're right here in the Communist Party. And that was the case. That's why China is this fucking neoliberal bourgeois fucking paradise. Although they obviously objectively better than the US. So
I have a
Shout
question,
out to
comrade. Whenever I was talking about how the party goes from the people to the people, from the people to the people, in this
Mass
going back and forward from needs to help, and we are talking about how we aim to go to an objective, the objective of the communists through this cultural revolution. What is this objective? Because I feel like a lot of people get confused with socialist, communist, anarchist, no class, but Soviet Union has always had a very strong in the government. It's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, so our goal, and this is just to finish, to wrap up the last point. I don't know if
Yeah,
I got to
sorry.
it, but just to clearly, what distinguishes us from the anarchists is not that we disagree on the end goal or the libertarian socialists, which is the stateless, classless, moneyless society. We don't disagree with that. It's the method of how we get there. So for example, the anarchists immediately want the abolition of the state, like literally tomorrow. We do the revolution tomorrow, no state. Tomorrow, no money. Which is, of course, that's utopian, idealist, counter-revolutionary, and just factually impossible. So our goal is that we, the Communist Party, establish a dictatorship of the proletariat. That means the proletariat, the working masses, be they the working masses, the proletariat in the intelligentsia, whether it be in the actual industry, so your manufacturing workers, as you know, Marx was chatting about, or the service workers, you know, those like even the DoorDash drivers, those are now service proletariats. They give a service, which is to pick up your food and drop it off at your house, or Instacart, or whatever.
We studied a term for these people, right?
There's a term, yeah, but I can't remember. I know, like, for example, the intellectual workers, they call them the intelligentsia. And it's very interesting. Mao, at least, he says, like, within the intelligentsia, some of them are bourgeois, some of them are revolutionary. So, like, for example, Mao was talking about, like, some of the old style Chinese philosophers and theorists or whatever were bourgeois, but, like, the teachers, you know, in the Chinese schools are revolutionary. So I think the same is the case in the United States. Now, even now, I think the proletariat, there's parts of it that is utterly reactionary. So, for example, there are doctors who are very socially conservative, very reactionary, very anti socialist, because capitalism has served them well. Capitalism treats the doctors, gives them a very good high standard of living. So, but nonetheless, the point is that the proletariat, the working masses, however we describe them, has a monopoly of violence, controls the state. And this state then serves them and suppresses the bourgeoisie. Which is the opposite of what we have now. Obviously, the laws, the state suppresses the working class and ups or upholds and protects, defends, acts as the armed wing of the bourgeoisie. Which is why, for example, most of the crimes, if you look up FBI statistics right now, most of the crimes are crimes against property. I think is a big significant portion. So that means that one of the biggest crimes that you can commit, one of the biggest portion of things that a criminal does is offend the bourgeoisie by infringing on the bourgeoisie's rights, his that he believes is most important, which is his private property. So the point of us communists is to establish the dictatorship of the proletariat, in which the means of production, that means the means by which we produce things, whether it be a service, whether it be some intellectual advancement or actual material things, is collectively owned, and we abolish private property. So we establish this type of economic system where all the things are collectively owned, publicly owned, and used not for profit basis, but for the improvement of the needs of the people. And then we continue in this way, as Comrade was saying, is that how do we know that we're doing the correct job, that we're implementing the correct policy? This is, as Mao Zedong pointed out, and even the Soviet Union had this concept. We listen to the needs of the people who are responding to us, saying that, for example, this particular policy in agriculture is inefficient for us, or this type of fertilizer, let's say it comes from, they were using from the cow. But farmers know, say, for example, that sheep fertilizer, or what is that shit? Manure from the sheep is better than the cow. So they report this to the party. The party then changes and increases the amounts of sheep-based manure as opposed to cows, and they go back and forth in this way. Until we have abolished classes, meaning there is no longer a distinction of the bourgeoisie. Because imagine, let's say, because we're chilling up in here in Kirksville, let's say tomorrow we have our communist revolution. We seize the town hall, we seize the prisons, we seize the police station, and everything in Kirksville is controlled by us. Tomorrow. Well, still tomorrow and for a long time after, the bourgeoisie of Kirksville, those rich people in Kirksville who own a lot of properties, I know, for example, one of them is the landlords, they'll still have all their money. And they'll still have all these different ways to manipulate, to inspire counter-revolution, to go back to the days of old. So we go forward on this path of trying to abolish the old system while transforming the people themselves to be all proletariats, to be all working class, until eventually there's no longer this distinction that this guy was a former super rich landlord. Now he's a true proletarian, just as everybody else is a proletarian. And this is, as Comrade pointed to earlier, is only possible through the economic and then the cultural revolution. So then there's no more classes, which means if there's no more classes, there's no need for a state in the old sense of the word, in the sense that like the state is the armed wing of some class, and then finally money will go away as well. So that is what we're going for. That's our aim. That's our objective. As revolutionary communists, baby.
And this was what I wanted to get to.
Sorry, I know I went on a rant there, but
whenever we were talking about communism, we talk just about our end goal. What Comrade said: classless, moneyless, stateless society. But in order to get there, we need this stage of socialism. That because communists first started with this explanation of how we need to get to this stateless, moneyless, classless society.
That conclusion, yeah.
So a lot of Democrats and a lot of liberals and a lot of ideologies saw that this is something very appealing to the working class.
Yep.
It is something that
It's their total
is very attractive.
emancipation, yeah.
So they started to appropriate or use this name of socialism when they really are not socialists, because
Not at all.
socialism is just what we call this process of the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Yeah.
And then we have things like German National Socialism. How was it? The Nazis?
The National Socialism.
National Socialism. Socialist Party of Spain, which is more capitalist than you can fucking imagine. Or we have a lot of, how you can say it, a lot of manipulations of what is the word socialism that it really is not.
Yeah. I mean, here in the United States, the best example you got is Bernie Sanders,
Yeah.
or the Squad. And even he talks about a lot of good things, and we agree with them on principle. For example, free healthcare for all. You know what I'm saying? We need to help the working class, and by making sure that the wealthy pay their fair share. Hey, Comrade, was that a good accent? He said I sounded like Obama. God damn it! You know. Point is, I'll work on my Bernie accent. But the point is that he says a lot of these good things, but he fundamentally does not get rid of the class antagonism. Antagonism based on who owns private property, which is that, for example, yes, you give them free healthcare, but the worker, when he still goes to his workplace, is still exploited. His surplus labor, his surplus value is extracted by the capitalists to accumulate profit, and this increases inequality, increases the discrepancy between the bourgeoisie and the working class. So he fundamentally doesn't get rid of the problem, which is the capitalism, which causes all of these issues. And of course, Bernie Sanders is a fucking imperialist and a social chauvinist. But we can get to that.
I need you to remind the Fox example, and I need to first talk about Lenin. Like, we cannot talk about how democracy is something horrible for the proletariat and not talk about Lenin. There is a book called State and Revolution.
Fire book,
in which in the just few chapters he just
like 120
destroys the whole democracy that especially we rely so much in Europe and North America. And he explains how what the state does is get revolutionary movements, split them up, cut them, and get the revolutionary content out of these groups.
Yeah.
Put them together and put it again into the system. Now this will survive in time. However, the revolutionary group will be destroyed. Furthermore, we see that the state is just trying to conciliate the two classes. The only reason why the state is there is because there has to be someone that mediates between the bourgeois and the proletarians who have opposite how you call it,
Class
interests. So the state emerges as to solve this contradiction, but it really don't solve it. It just makes it to continue in time and doesn't give any solution.
Yeah.
So this is what social democrats are really doing. Putting stitches, superficial measures, like free healthcare. There is no free healthcare doesn't do anything if there is people that they are still live out of the society and cannot access this free healthcare. It doesn't matter if it's free, if people cannot access it. That's why we need to do radical solutions and solutions that truly get to the root of the problem, which is what we try to do, right, comrade?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's 100% facts. First of all, Lenin's a goddamn genius. If you haven't read Lenin, you kind of suck. But it's okay. We understand. A lot of you are reactionary folks. But Lenin in The State and Revolution not only says, as Comrade pointed out, is that it kind of puts Band-Aids on the situation. Such as, for example, one of the Band-Aids that he's talking about is that they ban child workers in the United States. You can't be like below the age of whatever and work. And I think it's like if you're 15, you have to have special permission from either your parents or like the school or something like that. So that's an example of a Band-Aid that the bourgeoisie does. But what Lenin further points out, and I want to elaborate on, not that Comrade missed it, but perhaps he wasn't thinking about it, was how the state it's supposed to act as a referee, as a middle guy that stops these collision, as Comrade was saying, between the different classes. However, fundamentally, at the end of the day, the state will always, in a bourgeois society, in a capitalist society, will always side with the bourgeoisie on serious matters. An excellent example of this was, I think it was called Citizens United with the Supreme Court. And the Citizens United was basically, they wanted to rule that corporations themselves had the same rights as individuals, the same rights as human beings, to freedom of speech. And part of that freedom of speech was that you can contribute to a political campaign, that if you like a politician, you give money to him so that hopefully this can, help him get elected. And obviously, because they were given the same rights as human beings, corporations, like an institution, you can say, they are able to contribute exponentially more to any campaign, more than you and me as individuals. For example, a corporation can drop $7 million to say on this guy's campaign, or $500,000, whereas me, at most, at least me personally, maybe $20. Donation to a particular politician. So Lenin states that not only are they that referee, but this referee is kind of a crooked referee. Kind of, if you bribe that referee, he's going to vote. He's going to rule or give out penalties in favor of one team or another.
It's also worth noting that most European countries have laws against similar provisions.
Yeah.
At least directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what is funny? That we don't have that kind of problem, but we have something that is called la puerta giratoria, like a rolling door. This is because the government try to put policies, specific individuals try to put policies that are low or easy on the electrics, and whenever they're going to retire, they suddenly, magically, have a very good place in the electric with a lot of money and not a lot of workload. And this is something that is horrible because they are still working for the interest of the bourgeois. Why? Because whenever they retire, they are hired by them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That same thing happens here. It'll be some ex-politician goes into like working for CNN or some shit. What's that bitch named Tulsi Gabbard? She was one of those. that was like, yeah, I'm a politician, didn't work out, let me go work for, I think at first she tried at CNN, but she went to Fox News. I know for sure she's at Fox News. I don't know if she started at CNN or some other place. The same thing is true. And I mean, the same thing is true for even like the bourgeoisie itself is our politicians in the United States. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, God, she manipulated the laws. She definitely is guilty of insider trading. I would be willing to gamble however much money I've spent on my tuition, I'd be willing to gamble that she has insider trading. So, I mean, all of the people of Congress are worth millions of dollars at the very least. The lowest one is Bernie, and I think he's like 2-3 million. So they're all the bourgeoisie. And so obviously, when it comes time to pass legislation, to enforce laws, etc., they, the politicians, who themselves are either put into power by the bourgeoisie or they themselves are the bourgeoisie, they're not going to vote in opposition to themselves, against their own class interests. So our point is the democracy is bullshit because the candidates are bourgeois. You have Joe Biden versus Trump. Both of them are capitalist pigs. Both of them own some type of means of production and are super wealthy. They're not going to vote against their own interests. So because that the bourgeoisie puts up two parties, or even in Europe where they have the parliamentary, where there's like, for example, coalition between parties, they're all bourgeois parties. Manuel is very familiar with how in Spain, it's all bourgeois parties. Even the socialists are actually at best social democrats, which again are still don't fundamentally address the issue of class struggle, nor do they care about imperialism. So because this is the system we have set up, there has to be the violent revolution, the revolution of the working class to seize the means of production, to seize the state from the capitalists, as per Lenin, as per Marx. And the way that Lenin kind of advances or further develops Marxist theory is that there must be a vanguard party, a group of highly trained, highly specialized comrades in the Communist Party who kind of leads or guides or shepherds the working class people to building this, to having this revolution, to building this socialist society. So yes, please read State and Revolution. And I mean, that's our fundamental thesis. Obviously, the anarchists are just like, no vanguard party, just destroy all the things that's the state, all things that are the state are bad, which is, dumb.
I think I'm going to open another window here, but I think that a great example on how democracy doesn't really represent the people, at least the democracy that we have in most of the countries nowadays, which are democracies that work for the bourgeoisie, as my comrade just explained, is the Palestine matter.
Free Palestine.
Of course, Viva.
Up Gaza.
From the river to the sea. But why I say this? Because we have specifically in Europe, and I feel like in America, which are the main actors in this war, which are the founders of this war and the ones that have more interest on this, on Israel to have the control in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But what we see is that there is these politicians that have a lot of interest on helping Israel, and they give them a lot of money. They buy them weapons, and they give them money to make more weapons, and all of this ongoing cycle of craziness and violence. And at the same time, we have a pretty confidence agreement in the population almost worldwide that this is something bad, that this is a genocide, that this is horrible, that war should stop now. And we have clear examples. That's what I feel like strikes are so important, and let the governments know what the people want. And we have loads of examples all around the world. So there is a contradiction here between what the government is doing and what the people want.
Yep.
So how are you going to tell me that your government represents you whenever you are asking for a ceasefire and your government keeps sending money for killing more people and sending more bombs to Rafah?
Yeah. I mean, I think regardless of how people feel is the correct solution for Palestine, whether it be a one state solution, be it a Palestinian state or an Israeli state, or a two-state solution, whatever your opinion is, most people can fundamentally agree that there should be a ceasefire, that there should be a cessation of the violence between the Israeli and the Palestinians. Like, let's stop. In particular, of course, Israel's the horrendous aggressor, absolutely barbaric in its actions in Gaza. And most people, are regardless of ideology and regardless of what they feel should be the final solution or the final conclusion to the Gaza, or to the Palestine-Israel conflict, they agreed to the ceasefire now in the state, as Manuel was pointing out, is not listening to the people. As you've seen, hundreds of thousands of people in different countries, in fact, millions of people come out in, for example, Yemen, in favor of this ceasefire, but there's nothing that can be done because the state represents the interests of the bourgeoisie, and the bourgeoisie supports Israeli occupation, Israeli apartheid, Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people because it serves their interests, because Israel is the last vestige of European settler colonialism, not only in the Middle East, but in the world, generally speaking. Of course, shout out to my South African comrades and to the Aborigines of Australia and to the natives. We support land back, but anyways.
And I think a great example of this is Spain again, because in Spain we have this progressive government, this socialist government.
Sanchez, right?
Sanchez,
Yeah.
Pedro Sanchez, yeah.
Pedro
And he
Sanchez.
tries to be, fighting for the people. He wants to give this image. So he tried to be the first country in Europe to consider Palestine a country and try to help it out and try to stop the genocide. However, this is when the contradictions arise. Even if the government in your country listen to the people and try to take actions in it, they cannot. For example, in the example of because they are against their interest. In the case of Spain, it's because they are part of the European Union, and the European Union has objective and logical interest on controlling the Middle East. So it doesn't make sense for for Spain to be in the European Union and not take part in the European Union actions. So Pedro Sanchez had to eat his words, and we suddenly knew that he just bought weapons from the Israel and sent money from us, the European Union. So there is this contradiction: the interest of the government and what the people want.
Yeah. And I mean, even more simply here, going back to the U.S., because that's where we're at, the abortion question, what was it, 2021, 22, when it was overturned? Do you remember, comrade? He'll do a little fact-checking for us there. But I think it was 2021 when they overturned Roe v. Wade, and now they made it from federally protected abortion rights to now it'll be a state's decision if a state wants to. 2022.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, okay, so it was 2022. I had the year off by one. Now it's a state's decision. You know, some states will protect abortion, some states will put some type of restriction, and I guess ostensibly I would assume some could ban abortion totally. Which of course this decision was entirely unpopular. Even in Kansas, I think they had a referendum about abortion, and even not obviously leave the liberals alone, the leftists, you can say however you want to categorize them. Even the majority of conservatives in the state of Kansas, which is in the center, the Midwest of Missouri, I'm sorry, of the United States, voted against any type of abortion ban. As Comrade pulled up, I wish we could show you his computer screen, but even Kansas was like, no, we want to protect abortion rights. So clearly the Supreme Court's decision was against the will of the people, was against the demands of the American population, even cross ideological lines. The conservatives, who are generally pro-life, protected abortion rights in Kansas. So, I mean, this is just another example. We can keep going on and on and on. You know, the 2003 Iraq War was incredibly unpopular. Afghanistan War was at one point, I mean, they ended it, in 2021, 22, something like that? I think it was 21. Yeah, 20 years we were there. They invaded 2021, so 2020, in 2001, 2021. Yeah. At one point, the war in Afghanistan was less popular than the Vietnam War, which famously, if you know anything about American history, sparked a huge counterculture, a huge protest culture against the United States government. Yet the war in Afghanistan was less popular, and it continued. So I mean, we can keep on continuing, going on and on and on about how the state doesn't represent the interests of the people because it is controlled by the bourgeoisie, as Vladimir Lenin said. So let's have our revolution to making controlled by the working class, controlled by the proletariat. That way the states will do actually uphold the lines of the people, uphold the wants and the desires of the people, which is why we can objectively look at any case in history of a communist society, about the Communist Party and the Communist State upholding and improving the rights of the people popularly. Lenin dramatically improved the rights of women. Of course, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't this utopia, but he dramatically improved the rights of women. He protected LGBTQ rights. He protected the rights of minorities in Russia, which under the Tsar were brutalized. For example, the people of the Caucasus Mountains, the peoples of the Istan states, the Central Asia states, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, so on and so forth. Ukraine's rights improved. In fact, Ukraine gained independence as a result of Vladimir Lenin's policy. And the same thing can be said about Maoist China. Maoist China dramatically improved the conditions of the masses of China, who had suffered for so long under imperialism. And in fact, there's a very famous video. I have it saved in my phone. Vietnam. They were talking how they have the captions. They'll say they say this when in reality this. So basically, on the video itself, the captions or the writing on it was, people say that Vietnam was ruined by communism, and then underneath that they have another thing that says Vietnam before communism, and it's this disgusting image. I don't know. I think it was the French colonized Vietnam. And it was some French aristocrat, some French bourgeoisie.
I've seen this video.
And they throwing the bread and the children. They're throwing bread or some type of food. Maybe it was money. They were throwing something that was of value. I think it was some type of food. They were throwing it at the Vietnamese children. This was in Vietnam. They were throwing food at them, and the children like pigeons. Or if you ever gone to a pond and thrown bread at the geese, like animals were. Clearly looked like they hadn't received any type of education, any type of healthcare, had even access to clean, proper food and water, and they're just running up and collecting whatever it is this fucking French aristocrat bitch was throwing at them. And look at Vietnam now. It's exponentially better. Comrade has the picture pulled up. I think that was it. I think that's literally it.
Yeah, this is.
Oh my God, it's disgusting. Disgusting. Yeah, I think it's bread, right? What does it look like to you, Comrade?
Grains and coins.
Grains and fucking coins throwing at them, and these kids are swarming like pigeons or like geese. It's so fucking disgusting. But communists everywhere throughout the world have improved the conditions. They haven't achieved utopia, they haven't achieved protection, but they at least gave dignity and rights and improved the conditions of their people. So I won't accept any slander, because otherwise the alternative is this shit. This bullshit that you, hopefully Comrade can pull it up on our screen. Bet he already did. Shout out to him. That's the alternative. A world like that. Which is fucking disgusting and dehumanizing. Humans as animals. That's why we're communists. Right, Comrade?
That's all.
Anyways. Anything else? Well, comrades, that's gonna about wrap it up for us on the People's Podcast. Chatted a little bit about communism. Next time we'll get deeper into the theory. We talked a little bit about the state. I think next time what we're gonna do is talk about wage labor and capital. It's a book by Karl Marx. So we'll have two parts of the show. That will be the first part. The second part will be a more in-depth dissection of Vladimir Lenin's State and Revolution, written in 1917.
We're also going to do one, of course, on dialectic materialism and historical materialism. And this is specifically for Kiki,
so obsessed with fucking
who I will
philosophy.
Do a study on the difference between idealism and materialism, and how horrible are the fucking idealists, and why we shouldn't be idealists. Never. Always be a materialist.
Yeah, whatever. The philosophy, it doesn't matter. What matters is the practice. Anyways, long live the communist struggle for liberation. Long live the proletariat's independence. Down with the bourgeoisie, up the people's republics. Viva la revolución y los revolucionarios que murió por la libertad de los pueblos obreros.